Nestled between towering peaks and endless valleys lies Kashmir, a land of breathtaking beauty, but also a land shaped by decades of conflict. Today, we take you beyond the headlines to unpack the recent escalation between India and Pakistan, triggered by a tragic and violent attack in Pahalgam, Kashmir, on April 22, 2025. This isn't just about a single event. It's about a deep-rooted history, unfinished wounds, and escalating tensions between two nuclear-armed neighbors. In this video, we will take a closer look at the origins of the India-Pakistan conflict, what exactly happened in Pahalgam and why it matters, the responses from both sides of the border, and how the world is watching, holding its breath. If you care about peace, diplomacy, and understanding the stories that shape our world, stay with us, because this is about more than borders. It's about people and a future that hangs in the balance. April 22, 2025, a date that has once again shaken the Valley of Kashmir and sent shockwaves across South Asia. An attack in the serene town of Pahalgam has reignited one of the most dangerous rivalries in modern geopolitics, India and Pakistan. Dozens were killed and many injured as violence tore through a region already caught in the crossfire of history, politics, and power. In the wake of the attack, tensions along the line of control have rapidly escalated. Military units are on high alert, diplomatic ties are fraying, the threat of open conflict looms. But to understand the gravity of this moment, we must look deeper. What triggered this conflict? Who is claiming responsibility? And most importantly, where is this headed? Let's begin by exploring the history that laid the foundation for today's crisis. To understand the current tensions, we need to go back to 1947. When India and Pakistan were partitioned, Kashmir became a disputed region. Both nations claimed the territory, leading to the first of several wars between them. In 1947, India and Pakistan fought their first war over Kashmir. The region, with its strategic location and cultural significance, has remained a flashpoint ever since. This has resulted in three major wars, 1947-48, 1965 and 1971, and countless skirmishes, each intensifying the conflict further. In recent years, tensions have only worsened. In 2019, India revoked Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, stripping Jammu and Kashmir of its special autonomy. This move angered Pakistan and led to widespread protests and diplomatic condemnations across the globe. Let's focus on the events of April 22, 2025, the Pahalgam attack. This tragic incident occurred in the town of Pahalgam, a popular tourist spot in Indian-administered Kashmir. The attack resulted in multiple casualties, including civilians and security forces. Initial reports suggest that armed militants ambushed a convoy of security personnel, leading to significant loss of life. India immediately blamed Pakistan-based militant groups for the attack, while Pakistan denied any involvement. The consequences of this attack were immediate. In response, India launched military operations along the Line of Control, LOC, leading to further skirmishes. Both countries have now increased their military presence in the region. In the chilling aftermath of the Pahalgam attack, India didn't wait long to respond. Within hours, the Indian government issued a stern condemnation, directly accusing Pakistan of harboring and supporting terror networks operating in Kashmir. But it wasn't just words. In a bold and unprecedented move, India announced the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty, a historic agreement signed back in 1960, brokered by the World Bank, which governs how the waters of the Indus River system are shared between India and Pakistan. This river system isn't just a body of water, it's a lifeline, supplying millions in both countries with drinking water, irrigation for crops, and hydropower. The message was clear: the stakes have changed. As military convoys moved toward the line of control, cross-border skirmishes became more frequent. Tensions were no longer limited to diplomatic halls, they were echoing across the mountains of Kashmir. Back home, Indian public sentiment turned sharply hostile. Fueled by emotional media coverage, calls for retribution grew louder. The suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty was more than retaliation. It was a signal, a sign that even natural resources are now pieces on this geopolitical chessboard, and as the rivers slow, so does hope for peace. Across the border, the response from Pakistan came swiftly and firmly. The government issued a strong denial, rejecting any involvement in the Pahalgam attack. Instead, Pakistan turned the blame on India, accusing it of using the tragedy as a pretext for heightening regional tensions. But that wasn't all. What truly ignited alarm in Islamabad was India's decision to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty, a move Pakistan labeled as a grave provocation and a violation of international law. In retaliation, Pakistan expelled several Indian diplomats and suspended bilateral trade agreements. At the same time, its military was placed on high alert, with increased troop movements near the line of control. In Pakistani media, nationalistic rhetoric surged. Headlines painted India's response as aggressive and unjust. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens, already fatigued by decades of unrest, watched with growing concern. Calls for international mediation grew louder. Pakistan reached out to the United Nations, the OIC, and key global powers, urging for de-escalation and a return to dialogue. But as both sides dug in deeper, the world watched, nervously. As tensions between India and Pakistan rise, the world is watching, closely. The United States, China, and the United Nations have all stepped in, issuing urgent calls for restraint and dialogue. Washington has emphasized the need for direct communication between New Delhi and Islamabad, warning that continued escalation could destabilize an already fragile region. Meanwhile, China, Pakistan's strategic ally, has publicly voiced support for Pakistan's stance on Kashmir, calling for a peaceful resolution based on UN resolutions. At the same time, the United Nations has offered to mediate, urging both sides to avoid military confrontation and focus on diplomacy. But here's where it gets even more complex. With three global powers involved, each with its own interests, the crisis is no longer just a bilateral issue. It's a geopolitical flashpoint. A war between two nuclear-armed nations wouldn't just rattle South Asia, it could send shockwaves through the global economy, energy markets, and diplomatic alliances. On the ground, the situation is volatile. The line of control, the tense, unofficial border dividing Indian and Pakistani-administered Kashmir, is now the focal point of military activity. Satellite images reveal heavy troop movements, artillery deployments, and surveillance operations on both sides. Skirmishes, once sporadic, have become almost daily occurrences, raising fears that a single misstep could trigger something far more devastating. Diplomatic lines between the two nations? Nearly silent. Back-channel talks are rumored, but official communication remains frozen, with military-to-military contact described as tense and irregular. Meanwhile, as armies prepare for the worst, civilians pay the price. Thousands of families living along the border have been forced to flee their homes, caught in the crossfire of a conflict they did not choose. Relief agencies are on the ground but overwhelmed, struggling to deliver aid to displaced families as food, shelter, and medical resources dwindle. As the sun sets over the mountains of Kashmir, uncertainty looms larger than ever, leaving a region on edge and the world holding its breath. What happens if this crisis goes too far? The stakes are unlike any ordinary conflict because both India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. Experts warn, if full-scale war breaks out, the consequences could be nothing short of catastrophic. A nuclear confrontation in South Asia wouldn't just endanger millions, it would send shockwaves across the entire globe, triggering environmental, economic, and political fallout. Even without nuclear escalation, the economic cost would be staggering. Trade routes disrupted, infrastructure destroyed, foreign investments withdrawn, potentially dragging the region into a deep and prolonged recession. And then there's the human toll. Villages reduced to rubble, families torn apart, and thousands, perhaps millions, displaced. But perhaps the most tragic outcome would be the long-term erosion of any hope for peace. Years of diplomacy, people-to-people connections, and fragile confidence-building efforts lost in the fire of conflict. The region stands at a dangerous crossroads, and the world is watching. In conclusion, this is more than a political standoff. It's a moment that could define the future of South Asia. The April 22 Pahalgam attack has reignited decades-old tensions, placing two nuclear-armed nations on the edge of a perilous cliff. We stand today at a crossroads. On one side, the path of conflict, devastation, and irreparable loss. On the other, dialogue, diplomacy, and a chance for enduring peace. The risk of escalation is real, but so is the power of restraint. As global citizens, we must demand transparency, support peace initiatives, and hold our leaders accountable, not just for national security, but for human lives across borders. Because in the end, peace is not just the absence of war, It's the triumph of reason over rage, of unity over division. Let us hope and work for a future where diplomacy prevails and both India and Pakistan step back from the brink. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more unbiased updates on global issues. Your voice matters. Together, by staying informed and encouraging dialogue, we can be a part of the change the world needs.